On March 31, 1912, the White Star Line proudly announced the completion of the Titanic. Building this giant had taken 3 full years of hard work. Just days later, on April 10, 1912, the Titanic began its first voyage. But this was no ordinary ship. This was the largest passenger ship of its time, a floating palace. It stretched 269 meters in length, 28 meters in width, and rose 53 meters high, towering over the docks like a steel mountain. I know the numbers may sound simple, so let me give you examples to help you imagine them. Picture the area of 3 football fields placed side by side, and the height of a 17-floor building rising into the sky. That was the Titanic. It was so huge that even its own crew sometimes got lost inside. In fact, they needed 2 full weeks of practice just to memorize the ship's layout. So, how do we make a giant ship like this float? We make it hollow. By reducing its density, it stays on the water. The Titanic was divided into 16 watertight compartments, each separated from the others. Why? Imagine the ship hitting something and water rushing in. The captain could seal off the damaged compartment, keeping the rest safe. If the compartments were all connected, one hole would flood the entire ship from below. But here's the catch. The Titanic could survive damage to 4 compartments at most. If 5 compartments filled with water, the ship was doomed. The Titanic's enormous size and its system of watertight compartments made it famous. These features were proudly advertised as proof that it was the unsinkable ship. This happened after the Olympic, Titanic's twin sister, had an accident in 1911. Olympic was sailing near the warship Ms. Hawk when the 2 ships came dangerously close. The enormous size of Olympic created a suction effect that pulled Hawk toward it, and the ships collided. Hawk punctured 2 of Olympic's watertight compartments below the waterline. Yet, despite the damage, Olympic did not sink. It managed to return to port safely. The White Star Line wasted no time turning the Olympic survival into a powerful advertisement. They proudly declared to the world, "Our ship, the Olympic, was struck by a warship." 2 of its compartments were flooded, yet it still stayed afloat. This bold claim fed the growing belief that the design was unbeatable, and that Titanic, built even grander, was truly unsinkable. When you hear the word Titanic, first image that comes to your mind is the image of an iceberg, the reason why the Titanic sunk. But what if I told you that the iceberg is not the reason? 10 days before the Titanic sails, there was a big fire in one of the coal warehouses inside it. This fire continued for several days because of a strange thing called the phenomenon of spontaneous combustion. This happens to some materials when they have a strong tendency to oxidize. Imagine the coal lying quietly, then suddenly bursting into flames. The only thing needed was a little charcoal and a little oxygen. From here, the opinions were divided. Did this fire have an effect on the sinking of the ship or not? Some argue that the heat damaged the iron walls, separating the watertight compartments. The fire that occurred before sailing weakened the iron separating the compartments, which made it unable to bear the pressure of water as soon as it got into one of the cabins. This remains one of the theories about why Titanic sank so quickly. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton, England, heading to New York City. The ship stopped in France and Ireland to pick up more passengers before crossing the Atlantic. On board were about 1,200 people, rich businessmen, famous celebrities, families seeking a new life in America, and crew members who kept the ship running. The Titanic was not the only ship heading to New York that day. Another ship, the SS Californian, was sailing ahead on the same route. Along the way, the Californian ran into small icebergs. Its only radio operator, Cyril Evans, sent a warning to nearby ships. Be careful, there is ice ahead. On Titanic, the operator ignored the message. He didn't reply, or even write it down. 15 minutes later, Evans sent the warning again. This time, the Titanic's operator passed it to an officer, but the ship still kept going at full speed, 22 knots. The Californian, on the other hand, stopped for the night and waited until morning, especially when surprised that there is a large group of icebergs ahead, bigger than those it saw a little while ago. At 11:07 that night, The two ships were only about 10 miles apart. The radio operator on the SS Californian sent a warning to Titanic, telling them to stop because icebergs lay ahead. But since the ships were so close, the signal came through very loudly, especially the sharp clicks of the Morse code. Here, the radio operator of the Titanic replied to the radio operator of the SS Californian, and he said nervously, "Shut up! Shut up! I am busy." He ignored the warning message that time and did not deliver it to the captain. Everyone watching this video wonders, who was the man that could have saved 1,500 lives? His name was Cyril Evans, the radio operator on the SS Californian. At 11:30 that night, he switched off the radio and went to sleep. He chose to rest at the very moment when Titanic's fate was being decided, because at exactly 11:40, just 10 minutes after Evans shut off the radio and went to sleep, Titanic struck the iceberg. While Evans closed his eyes to rest, 1,500 passengers on Titanic closed their eyes forever. On April 14, 1912, at 12:27 a.m., the captain of the Titanic, Edward Smith, commanded his wireless operator, Jack Phillips, to send a message in Morse code CQD to all the ships around it, which was the distress code back then. After 6 attempts with no response, the wireless operator Jack tried the new distress code, SOS. The wireless operator sent his message, and all the ships responded except one ship. The SS Californian was the closest ship to the Titanic, only a few miles away, but it failed to respond to the distress signals. At this time, the Californian's radio operator, Cyril Evans, was asleep. If he had been awake, the ship might have reached Titanic in time to save many more lives. The time is now 3:30 in the morning. A white light appears in the sky, but this time, it is not from Titanic. It is the ship Carpathia. Announcing its arrival, "I am the Carpathia." Carpathia was about 100 kilometers away, sailing in the opposite direction. When its captain received Titanic's distress call, he immediately changed course to help. Thanks to Captain Arthur Rostron's decision, about 705 people were rescued from Titanic's lifeboats. But why did the ship sail with so few lifeboats? Titanic was supposed to carry 60 lifeboats, and on paper at least 48. In reality, there were only 20 lifeboats on board. Each could hold about 65 people, which means they could carry around 1,178 passengers. Out of more than 2,200 people on Titanic, that left over 1,000 with no chance of rescue. So, the next question is, why did the lifeboats carry only 705 people instead of 1,178? It is said that Captain Smith never held any drills or training for such an emergency. There was no clear plan for how to use the lifeboats. As a result, loading each boat took about half an hour instead of 10 minutes. Many boats even left half empty, because the crew feared they might break under too much weight. And since the first-class cabins were closest to the boat deck, most of the wealthy passengers boarded first. Women and children were given priority, but in reality, that priority was strongest for women and children in first and second class. Most of the third-class passengers did not even get to the boats. Why, my friend? Because third-class passengers were locked in with iron gates from the beginning of the trip to its end. The custom was that the third-class passengers were the poor, those who always suffer from diseases as they neglect their personal hygiene. Let me tell you that after every trip, there was a quarantine for third-class passengers or anyone who dealt with them. Because of this tragedy, international navigation laws changed forever. In 1914, the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea was established, requiring ships to keep radios manned 24 hours a day and to carry enough lifeboats for all passengers. After Titanic's tragedy, a new safety system was created, the International Ice Patrol. Even today, planes fly over the North Atlantic to watch for icebergs. With radar and satellites, they track the ice and send warnings to ships. Their mission is clear: to make sure no ship ever suffers the same fate as Titanic. The Titanic was called unsinkable, yet in just a few hours it became the greatest maritime tragedy of its time. More than 1,500 lives were lost, but their story lives on as a warning and a lesson. Never underestimate nature, and never forget those who sailed into history. Thank you for watching this journey into Titanic's story. If you found it powerful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history told in this way.